and welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a wonderful, easy recipe for these sesame scones. Now, the scones are a little bit similar to the biscuit method that we showed much earlier on in the channel. Big difference is there's a little bit of a different ratio between the flour and the fat. There's no eggs in these, so the texture will come out a little bit different, and we're going to show you that here with some ingredients. So, starting off, we have some flour. We're using some milk, a little bit of kosher salt. We have an egg. This is going to be for egg wash at the end. Some baking powder. We have our sesame seeds. And obviously some butter here. This is sort of a partially laminated dough. So we're going to start by getting all of our dry ingredients together. So we have the baking powder, our all-purpose flour, and our salt together. And we're just going to mix that until well combined. So you can use a fork for this, you can use a whisk, whatever you'd like. And then right away we can get that butter starting to work in. So as I said, this is going to be a little bit similar to the biscuit method. So we're going to use a pastry knife here. You can also use forks, you can use your hands, whatever you normally do for something like a pie crust or a biscuit dough, you can use the same method here. It's going to be very similar at this stage of the game. Now, all of the amounts of the ingredients, as usual, are going to be in the description below. And we're going to keep going on this butter until it's about like this. You're going to want pea-sized pieces, maybe a couple of larger pieces as well. Well combined in the flour. And then once you're about there, you can see Chef Caleb has it just about here. One thing about the pastry knife, it does take a little bit of cleaning in between uses there. So once you have all the butter and flour off of your pastry knife and back in your bowl, if you need to, you can use a fork to get that off of there. You can see here we do have the butter nicely cut up in the flour there. And we can go ahead right now with our wet ingredients. So we're going to get the milk in there. I say wet ingredients, it's really just the one. So we're going to get the milk in there. And we're just going to start mixing it together until it starts to come together. We're not going to give it a big mix. We don't want it to be super uniform just yet. We just want to barely mix it until it starts to make these nice big clumps. And there you can see the clumps forming there. The milk is combining with the butter and flour. And you don't want to start overworking it at this time. You don't want to really get it into a single dough just yet. We don't want to encourage too much gluten. That's not really the texture of we're going for with the scones. So we're going to get that out of our bowl and onto our work surface here. And you can scrape some of that butter and flour off the bottom of the bowl. And that'll just combine nicely with the dough that you have on your work surface. And now we're just going to sort of gently press it together into a single dough. Again, you don't want to really knead it too much just yet. We don't want to encourage a lot of gluten formation for this dough. If you do feel like you're sticking to the board a little bit, don't worry too much about it. We're going to show you a quick trick for getting that up later. So here you can see we're getting it together. It's coming together quite nicely. So we're going to try and work this together into a squarish shape. Because our final result is going to be, we do want our final shape of our scones to be square. That's what we're doing. You can cut them into any shape you like, whatever you have. So there is a little bit stuck to the board, but here Chef Caleb's going to show you a little bit of fresh flour, a little rub, and a lot of that will just come right up off of the board, and we can combine that with our dough there. So we're just going to give that a little scrape across the board. It all comes up, and there you go. Now we still do need to flour our work surface here so that the dough doesn't stick while we're working with it, because we are going to start rolling it out. So another quick little sprinkle of flour. And now's the time to get our rolling pin working. So we want this to be a nice square shape, and we're just going to start stretching that out. Now you do want to secure your board for sure. And there you go. So once you've got that to a good thickness and a nice shape, we're going to use the remaining butter that we've set aside. And you want that butter to be nice and soft. Not melted, but definitely soft and pliable. So it does need to be pretty warm. So here you go. This is about where we want our dough. Now this is like a laminated dough, but we're not gonna go crazy with the layers like a croissant dough or anything like that. And it's not leavened with anything other than the baking powder. But now we're gonna add our butter. You can see Chef Caleb here is going to start spreading that out. And you can use your hands. You can use a spatula, whatever you feel comfortable using. He's just going to start spreading it out with his fingers here, and we're just going to cover half of the dough with the butter. A pastry knife is good for this as well. Any of those sort of things. You just want a nice, even coating of that butter. And this is also, once that's nice and evenly spread, we are going to fold this over a couple of times. And it's going to give us these nice layers inside. It's going to help it be really nice and flaky. Whatever butter is remaining on your implement, feel free to wipe that on the other side. And now we're going to add the majority of our sesame seeds. And don't be shy, because they really add a lovely flavor and texture into the middle of this scone recipe. So we're going to be a little bit generous with our sesame seeds here. And then you can fold that right over. And give it a good press together. And also a good time to sort of tuck in those corners. It'll keep those sesame seeds inside if you feel like there's a danger of them getting out. So a little bit more flour and another fold on our scones. So you can see now we have 2 folds on there for some nice layers of sesame seeds and butter in the middle of our dough. And we're just going to roll that out one more time. And we're rolling this out to be about twice as long as it is tall, so about 4 inches by 8 inches. That seems to be a pretty optimal shape for these. And that's about the size we want it. So you can see Chef Caleb here, he's just going to make sure that we have a nice even shape. You can see that fold in the side there. He's just going to do a little bit of hand shaping there to make sure that it's a little more even. And then we're just going to easily cut this. Once it's a shape you like, we're just going to cut it in half. And you want to use a really nice sharp knife for this. You don't want to crimp those edges down. And then you're going to cut each of the halves in half, and then in half again. And we're going to get 8 really nice scones out of this. Now, if you want smaller scones, by all means, you can certainly cut it smaller than this. If you want much larger scones, you're welcome to try that as well. Whatever works for you. You can see those nice layers, the sesame seeds on the inside there. And we're going to transfer that over to a parchment-lined baking sheet. And one last quick preparation before these hit the oven. So once we have all those on our baking sheet, we're just going to set that aside, and we're going to whip our 1 egg together. And we're just going to give these a nice little paint with our quick egg wash here. And this is for 2 reasons. This is, number 1, it's going to give it a nice brown color when it comes out of the oven, but it's also going to help hold on to the remaining sesame seeds that we're going to just spread on top of these. So we want to give it a good, generous coating with that egg wash on top. And then you're going to cover it with those last remaining sesame seeds. And again, it's really up to you. You can use it sparingly as more of a decoration. We love the taste of sesame, so we're going to be pretty generous with this. You can also use other things on here. Poppy seeds are a popular choice as well. Sesame works really well for us. We love it. It's easy to get around here, so it's one of our favorites. So once you have a good, generous coating on each of those scones, these are going to go into our preheated oven. So that oven is at about 350. We're going to cook that for about half an hour. And that's it. They are done. So you do want to let them rest a little bit before you start cutting into them because they are quite delicate, really nice. They're lovely, but they're quite flaky. So if you try to cut into them right away, as we did, you'll see Chef Caleb here in a second making an attempt at cutting one of these open. It did come apart just a little bit as we were trying to cut it open, but they are really nice when they're still warm. They're nice when they're cold. They have a wonderful texture. Obviously, they could use a little bit more butter. Why not? And that's it. These are delicious. They're really easy. We make breakfast sandwiches on them. They also go really well with different kinds of cheeses. They're quite versatile and really delicious. They go with tea and coffee. Fantastic, really simple little recipe to do. If you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if there's any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.